Good morning, it's day 118. Just started walking. I've got 17 and a half miles today to the second shelter, the first shelter being the one I was aiming for last night. Is that right? Maybe the third shelter today then. I'm not sure if there's one in the middle. But yeah, should hit the Roush shelter in about hour and 45 minutes or so. It's under 4 miles. But yeah, I just wasn't feeling it last night. I was tired and it was late, and I was at 14.3 or so when I came to a spring that already had a couple of campers set up there, and they were building a fire, and I knew one of them. So it was at least one familiar face. And then, so I tucked in there last night. Stealth site, totally. But anyway, that makes for 17.5-ish today. I can't remember what all is along the way, but I'm just gonna hike it and see what comes. Strange atmosphere this morning. It's like cool, but incredibly moist, like clammy. It's like 63 degrees, but everything has got like a coating of moistness, and it's not like morning dew, it's like high humidity. And the current vibe is, almost like a fog, really, but there's no fog in the air. It's just that level of moisture. But it feels like it's extremely overcast is what it is also. And according to my Garmin forecast, it's not the chance of rain doesn't appear till a 30% at 7 p.m. for thunderstorms and a 40% at 9 p.m. So it's kind of part of why I wanted to get on the road, get on the trail this early, was to get in camp before any chance of rain gets too high. And one of the other guys in camp was saying 4 p.m. for the rain, so he's probably just looking at a different forecast app. So I've come up slightly in elevation, just a few dozen feet probably, but as you can see in the trees behind me, maybe, I suddenly feel like the treetops at this elevation are just touching the bottom of the fog that I was alluding to earlier. I'm just like a half mile or even less than that from the shelter, but I really need to stop and put on bug spray. They're starting to land on me more than I can control, and I'm afraid I'm going to get chewed up before I realize it. But talk about a dark and gloomy day with these clouds. But the lay of the land feels very man-made, to some degree. I'm reminded of that spring yesterday where all the silt that settled out of that spring was bright orange. And so that makes me think mining, like there's a high copper content or something. Well, this is the countryside where they smelted iron, so I guess that stands to reason. The gravel underfoot where I'm walking right now is very black. This all feels like it was made with a bulldozer, grading machinery at some point. I was reading back there on that plaque billboard thing that they installed these limestone filtration wells along this portion of the creek starting in the 1980s with a supplemental high water well that was added in the early 2000s. It's like 1986 and 2000. And what they do is they force a portion of the water grabbed a couple hundred yards upstream through pipes, and then force it through a cylinder of crushed limestone, which kind of filters the water and adds this, reduces the acidity of the water to kind of regulate the pH balance of the water so that fish can live in it, and that the water upstream of those filters is too acidic from the old coal mining operations that used to operate in this region in the 1800s. So I was right about that, everything looking like railroad beds and smelling of coal mines. The billboard back there and the plaques confirmed that, but it was like from the 1820s to the 1870s, and finally starting to go back to nature in like 1910. Oh, it's just a grove of dead trees. How creepy. And the gunfire is starting back up. Today is Saturday, let me think. It seems further away than it did yesterday. Wow, look at this. Just suddenly there's a swath of blight that's looking back into the forest where I just stepped out. We have a porta potty, a laundry, and a sink, and then a modular bathroom attached to the back. I'm assuming there's a hostel in that building with a front porch. And then hiker lounge and a resupply module filled with pretty good supply of snacks and frozen pizzas, as well as fuel, etc. But I am hitting the trail. So there's the hostel. Welcome, hikers. Crossing the Swatara. Hope I'm pronouncing it right. Yeah, it's got very Victorian steampunk vibes on this bridge. There's the AT right there. So we're coming off the gravel road right before we go under the interstates. So I'm on the more or less flat ridge, and this one's more like a ridge, which means it's got a breeze and it drops off in both directions. And it's been recently maintained because it's weed whacked like 2 or 3 feet on either side of the trail. Quite nice, and there's a lot of like dead grass from the trail maintenance. It's only a couple of days old. So we've got 3.5 miles to go. I'm gonna call that hour and 40 minutes. And suddenly it's gotten dark and gray, so rain might be imminent. But hopefully, it just smells cool too. But hopefully not. But it has gotten very dark and gray. Plus the trees I happen to be walking under right now are really dense. I hope I don't get wet. But it's okay if I do. I'm gonna go ahead and put my pack cover on, I think, just preemptively. It's 6:15. That's more than 2 hours before sunset. And it feels like it's a half hour after sunset in terms of how dark it is. I expect it to hit any second. Wind is starting to pick up. I'm just pumping along as fast as I can, safely. But, it hasn't started raining yet, but man, it's like dark.